The Philadelphia Phillies are looking as lifeless as they have been all season, and with the MLB trade line upon us, the pressure is on Dave Dombrowski to elevate this team to the World Series threat they desire to be. While the trade for Austin Mays has already been made, there are more moves that must be done in this team, and many fans are looking at Brent Rooker as the potential answer. We're going to break down what that means for this Phillies team, whether or not it makes sense to dive into it, and to throw it to you right away, Luke Arcaini. You can't convince me after watching this team in the recent days that another bat could not be useful on this roster.
Yeah, no, this team needs a bat. Now the question is, with this obvious one that we're about to get into with Brent Rooker, is it worth kind of changing up your defensive alignment here? Because Brent Rooker hasn't played the field since May 1st. He's not a good fielder. He's 29 years old and he doesn't play the field, which isn't a good sign. Most guys don't age out of the field before they turn 30. So when that happens, that's usually the case for disaster in the outfield. Obviously, we know our DH right now is Kyle Schwarber. So with signing Rooker, could come Kyle Schwarber back in left field. And listen, that was a very hot topic. Schwarber's first year, all I heard about for the first 6 months of 2022 was we have to get Kyle Schwarber out of left field. So now it seems like a lot of backtracking here by a lot of people. So is the risk worth taking? Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. This dude freaking rakes.
Yeah.
25 homers this year, 948 OPS. He has like a 1,500 OPS over the last like 7 games or something like that. Yeah, last 30 days, 1,250 OPS with a 370 average. He has 11 homers over the last 30 days. This dude rakes. It's obvious that he's hitting this ball right now to get out of Oakland. He wants to leave. He wants to go to a contender. And listen, I think if the Phillies, I think if the chance comes along, and I think that if the package isn't too crazy, I just think you worry about the defense when you get there.
Yeah.
I think you go for the bat. I think you go all in, right? I think after watching this team, and listen, even since the beginning of the year, I've said since opening day, even when this team was 30 games over 500 and they were playing like definitively the best team in baseball, I've said they're gonna need another bat, right? They're gonna need another guy that can hit home runs, and another guy that can rope doubles, and another right-handed bat. And even though this defense would really get hit a little bit, I mean this guy rakes, man. He hits the ball just at an unbelievable clip.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you dive into Dave Dombrowski's heart of hearts and think about how he's constructed this team, it's pretty clear that he's willing to sacrifice some defense for guys that can absolutely rake and guys that can knock the ball out of the park in the way that Brent Rooker is capable of. Now, we did get an interesting report that I did want to pull up here discussing this from Bob Nightingale of the USA Today that said that he's here so that baseball president of operations Dave Dombrowski and the Phillies, quote, don't believe Rooker is a fit. Now, that contradicts a previous report from Nightingale himself that said that the Phillies were, quote, keeping a close eye on Rooker. This also comes following the Hayes trade, in which Dumbrowski and Rob Thomson both spoke pretty openly about they're comfortable with the outfield and how it is. Now, we are also at the point where it is smokescreen season across the MLB. What is said is not necessarily what is meant. And I find it hard to believe personally that a guy like Johan Rojas, who I like and still am optimistic about in the future, could go from a guy who was sent down to AAA just a few weeks ago, and then you're looking at as a key part of your playoff roster. So do you think this is more of the posturing and just seeing what the price is at, or do you think this is something that they actually believe?
Yeah, I still think that's a smokescreen. And I said it last night. I said there's only so many things that Dave Dombrowski can say. He's not going to come out and say our outfield still sucks. We need to get better, right?
Right.
I listen. I don't think there was a few people last night in my replies saying, well, why can't he say we want to go get better? Because there's no benefit to that.
Right.
Like I don't understand the benefit to him saying, well, we would maybe look into another bat. That only like shows your hand more. Like I'd be completely fine if Dave Dombrowski didn't say a single word till 6:01 Eastern on Tuesday.
Sure.
Like I don't need him to say anything, right? He can go do what he needs to do, and then he can talk after. There's not a damn thing that he can say over the next 72 hours that will convince me more or less that they're going to go get a certain guy compared to a different guy. Because what he says is he's not going to show his hand, right? Like he's not going to go out. He's not going to tell you, oh, we need a power hitting center field bat that plays in the AL Central and has 2.5 more years of control. But I'm not going to name who it is. Or we need a power hitting left fielder that just moved to the DH spot who's on the worst team in baseball, but I'm not going to say who it is, right? There's just no point to it, right? So listen, I'm not buying any stock into anything anybody says from this Phillies organization over the next 3 days because frankly, they're not going to tell you what they're doing. Like they're not going to tell you who's coming here, right? I don't think anybody expected Austin Hayes, right? That one really caught me off guard. And while I think it's a great move, I wasn't expecting that. I don't think anybody was. I mean, I was expecting a platoon guy for Marsh, but I wasn't expecting it to be from an Orioles team who is probably the best team in the American League other than maybe Cleveland who are playing right now. So like I don't think there is necessarily any reason for them to show their hand, but at the same time, I think they have something in that hand, right? I still think there's something there. And if I had to honestly say it right now, this time on Thursday, I don't know if Rojas is your everyday center fielder, right? Like I still think they're in on Robert. And I think there were some things yesterday from Rob Thomson that he said they do believe Austin Hayes that he can play every day. So when he got brought in, he was more sort of looked at as just a guy that can hit lefties, but he actually had a better slash line last year against righties. So like he's been a guy that has been able to play every day. So I think they're maybe sort of looking at that as more of a maybe, hey, let's try and get him in there every day because the bat's good. So I just don't think there's no way to know, right? There's never a way to know. And I think they still have a bunch of things up their sleeve right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the appeals with Brent Rooker is he is a guy that can truly hit from both sides of the plate or hit from either side of the pitching staff, that this is not a guy that can be looked at as a platoon guy. And even when you compare him to some of the other like bigger names that we mentioned with the Lance Thomas, the Luis Robert, like Brent Rooker's stats pop beyond these guys. And I understand that's not the full story, particularly with a guy like Robert or like Hayes, who obviously hasn't been an everyday player. But I do think like it's notable that when you're thinking about the best bat on the market, I think Brent Rooker is the answer. And I even might feel that way in comparison to Luis Robert there. Now, I did want to bring up the Hayes trade once again. There's no doubt in my mind that this at least impacts the conversation to an extent. As much as they are talking about how they believe he can be more than that, I know he's been an all-star, all these types of things, I still think I look at this as more or less a platoon with Brandon Marsh, and when push comes to shove, that's probably going to be the answer. And by the way, with Brandon Marsh, this was a guy, and they mentioned with Hayes that they've been pursuing him for multiple trade deadlines at this point. I think he probably was an option when they made that initial Brandon Marsh trade. With Marsh, I kind of expected at the time when the deal was done that this was going to be a guy that was a glove-first guy with the hope that the hit tool can develop. It's kind of turned out a little bit of the opposite there, that his hitting's been far beyond what I expected, but he also has not been the lockdown defender that I thought he was advertised as, or my belief, and we've seen that on full display even this week with him missing I wouldn't say routine fly ball, but a play that he absolutely should have made that ended up costing this team. So I'm not as optimistic about shifting Marsh out to center field and putting Hayes in that steady left field position, which is why I shift more towards this Rooker conversation. And I also like, with Kyle Schwarber, he's not going to be a gold glover. There's no doubt about that. But he is a guy that tries. He is a guy that I don't think will absolutely kill you. And the fact that they've been living with Castellanos, I do think the pros of the bat outweigh the cons if you can get him at an attainable price.
Yeah, and my only issue right now is that if you would make a move for Brent Rooker, right, and either him or Schwarber went out to play left field, the issue for me right now is that, I mean, granted, Austin Hayes can play center field, so like that wouldn't be a crazy issue, but I don't know if they want Austin Hayes in center every other day. And the issue is a Marsh Rojas platoon doesn't really do anything in center because both of the guys don't really hit lefties that great. So like that's kind of a throwaway thing there. So the only thing is a move for a Rooker would kind of push Austin Hayes to play center field every other day. And listen, if they're okay with that and they believe in him, that's fine. I just don't know if that's their vision right now. Because that is my only thing, that if you would go get a Rooker and one of Schwarber or Rooker would play left field every day, that would kind of move Hayes back to center field, which I don't necessarily know if that's what they want to do right now.
Yeah, fair enough. So a lot of questions still to be answered, and as you mentioned, the deadline is counting down. So expect the phones to be active this weekend for Dave Dombrowski. We will see when push comes to shove what deals actually go through for this Phillies team. But the more and more I watch him lately, the more and more it's pushing me to add another bat to make this lineup as great as possible. And I just want to reinforce my mindset that this absolutely has to be an all-in year. So we will see how things go, but we'll be breaking down everything right here on Phillies Digest. Stay tuned. We got plenty more of content coming out around the trade deadline and beyond. For me and Luke Arcaini, signing off for the day, and talk to you next time right here on Phillies Digest. Peace.